Hey everybody, Penguin here. Today we have another special guest. He bought his first harp 45 years ago. He's an artist in both music and display art, and a very active member in the auto harp communities on social media. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Mr. Dan Presler. Maybe if we can get you back here.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, there, Jeff.
There we go. How are you doing today, Dan?
Oh, doing pretty good. I wish it was cooler here. I've been working on little things. The wife is gone. She's taking a week off. That's her first vacation in probably 2 years. So.
Oh, nice. And she went without you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to head down there early next week. We have a place down at the beach, and so she's going to go spend a whole week down there.
Okay, let me adjust my camera a little bit.
Oh.
Too much. That's going to be good enough. Okay. Well, we're going to talk. This is a relaxed, very informal kind of a chit chat, sitting on the back porch, just having a discussion type thing. And hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about you. For starters, I said you bought your first harp 45 years ago. So it's been that long since you started playing?
I bought my first auto harp just not too long after I got out of the military. I did that in December of 73. So somewhere in and around 74 is when I bought my very first harp.
Oh, nice.
Can't really say. I think the reason is up until then I had owned guitars, but the first actual guitar I tried to really play was a 12-string, and I never got proficient at playing guitar. It decided that I was not very good at it. I have a lot of brothers that are tremendously better than I am. I actually have 7 brothers.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So I kind of sat off, and somehow, I can't remember, I had an album that I managed to come across called Fingers Akimbo. It's an interesting album, but it was actually a guy on there that did a lot of the playing. His lead was played on an auto harp, and it kind of intrigued me, and so I went and bought one. Unfortunately, that very first harp only lasted me a couple years, and I ran into money problems and pawned it and lost it.
Ouch.
Yeah. So it was one of those things, when you're first out of the military and you're trying to establish yourself again, it didn't work. Then it was probably in and around about 82 or so that I actually, after I had gotten married, bought my second one, and I kept that one for quite a while. I don't know where it went. I lost track of it. And then over the years, I've just kind of kept playing it. Most of what I did when I played, when I first had my harp, it was my job when I played with my brothers to keep the tempo of the music. Okay. They would look to me to keep the tempo. I was the one establishing the rhythm of all the song. And so that's kind of where I learned how to do rhythm. And a lot of it was, training, or not so much training, but my dad played guitar. And so when we were kids, he would always have a guitar out. He would be playing Hank Williams, Hank Snow, all the old. And my mom had a beautiful voice. She could sing. I mean, anytime when she was in the kitchen, she would be singing. And she had a beautiful, even though I can't do it, she had a beautiful yodeling voice. And
that's talent right there.
Yeah. And so that's where part of my upbringing kind of initiated us into music.
So back in the beginning of the 80s, is that when you really started to take it serious playing and actually try to really learn?
Actually, in a way, yes. In a way, no. Like I said, most of what I did back then was doing backup and keeping rhythm. It wasn't probably until I was in my mid 40s that mid 40s, mid to late 40s, that I started to discover some of the other musical venues, bluegrass festivals, and that kind of a thing. And I did start going to some of those. I had one of my first ones I went to, or not too long after I had been playing with that. I actually had one that almost discouraged me from continuing on playing, because I actually sat down in a circle at a bluegrass festival, and as soon as I sat down with a couple of my friends, two of the other people from the group stood up. One was a guitar player and the other one was the banjo player. And they looked at me and said, as long as that auto harp player's there, we're not going to be playing. Auto harps don't belong in bluegrass.
Wow.
And so it was just like, whoa.
That's just rude.
Yes, very rude. And luckily everybody else at the circle was fine with it. And so it was kind of like, okay, just kind of, you can't control everybody.
No, you can't.
And the problem I had is coming from, even though the town where I grew up here in Vancouver, Washington, which is along the Columbia River, across the river from Portland, Oregon. It's not a small community, but in a long way it is. And we had kind of limited exposure. And it probably wasn't, I had started trying to do some open mics. It was scary getting up and doing my very first solo one. I had done a couple with my brothers, kind of doing backup for them. But it wasn't probably until I was in my 50s that I actually found out that there was even anything that remotely looked like an auto harp group. They just weren't, nobody talked about them. Only because the only reason I really found out is because I ran across a gentleman who unfortunately has already passed away, but he was a very good auto harp player. He had his own style. And he said, hey, how about you coming over and checking out this deal over here over in Portland? And so I started going over there. It was interesting going over there and seeing what other people did. My style of play was a little bit different than theirs. So that was kind of a little bit of a conflict, I should say, for me more than for them. So it was just one of those things. But from then on, getting into the open mics, any place where I could find an open mic, that's where I went. And it was always fun, always the learning experience. I think probably one of the more interesting open mics I went to one night is we had, just by chance, 5 different auto harp players show up at the open mic. And not a single one of us played the same style of auto harp. And so cool. It was interesting hearing and listening to the different people that were doing it.
Sure. Now, were you able to get like all 5 together on the stage at one time to play something, or?
No, because none of us really played this, so it was kind of, every once in a while they would towards the ends of the sessions of the open mic, invite everybody to come up and play as a big group. And some of us would, some of us wouldn't. It all depended a lot of the time on what the song was. And
True.
And so it was kind of one of those deals. And so let's see, trying to figure out where else to go from here. when I was probably in my mid, well, no, I'd say probably still in that time of the late 40s to early 50s. I decided to join a church choir.
Okay.
Or I got invited to join a church choir. Up until then, it was kind of interesting. I had basically been told that I did not have a voice for singing. And so basically,
that's always nice to hear.
Yeah. Well, I joined the choir and I did okay. It lasted for about a year and unfortunately developed a polyp next to one of my vocal cords. It took, they did surgery on it once, it grew back, did surgery on a second time, and it went away. Neither time was it cancerous, so that was a good part of it. But it was just one of those things. But then through the vocal training and stuff they put me on, helped me determine more what keys I could easily play in. And it also taught me where my limits and where not to stress my voice and how not to.
Right.
And so with that, then I started, that's when I really started going more into what I like, the style I like to play, which is on the opposite side. I know that a lot of people, a lot of auto harp players do medley. So basically it's instrumental only type playing. That I don't really care for. I doesn't mean that I haven't. I've actually composed a couple small short ones myself. Right. But for me, what I like is a song that'll tell a story. And so I love playing and putting the two together. That's where I use the rhythm style that I know how to easily do and put it in to the song so that I can end up mixing my auto harp with my voice and the voice with my auto harp. So they kind of blend together, which is a big thing for me. And I do a wide range of artists, from Chris Stapleton to Tom Paxton to Casey Chambers. If you don't know who she is, you should look her up because she's a fantastic artist.
I think I've heard.
Yeah, Casey Chambers, her father started the Australian version of the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, and, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a fantastic artist to listen to in a wide range of songs that she does. But some of the songs that I really like are the ones where she is telling stories in her music. And the one other thing that I've always strived on when I play is I'm never attempting to mimic an artist. I want to be true to the artist. I want their songs. I want somebody, if I'm playing their song, I want them to understand and they can recognize the song, and that's what it is. But I may not follow it exactly at the same tempo. I may do a little bit. I may have slight vocal pauses where they may not have had a slight vocal pause. So it's minor things, but it's something that somebody can recognize the song, but it's putting a little bit of myself into those songs.
Well, you kind of got to do that. You have to make it your own, no matter whose music you're playing, your own or anybody else's. You have to make it your own. And I think that an audience actually feeds off of that better than just playing the song exactly how an artist recorded it. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, and it's kind of funny and one of the other groups that I do I love is Old Crow Medicine Show, but it's kind of funny because their first thing anybody thinks about when they think about Old Crow Medicine Show is Wagon Wheel. and it's one of the songs I can pick up a harp and I can play you Wagon Wheel. Just, singing it, no. That is where one of my brothers does a tremendously better vocal than I do. I will do backup for him, but I won't play. I mean, I'll sing backup, but that he's the one that does the lead on that song. That's just, and there's other songs that they do that are just as good. They just didn't get as well known as some of the others. So,
well, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of like me when you say you like playing music that tells a story. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like country music, at least older country music, because most of the songs did tell you a story. Sometimes not always beginning to end. They left you enough for you to make your own decision as far as what the outcome was. And that's the type of song I really like, is they don't tell you exactly what happened and they leave it up to your interpretation. And, but I grew up in the 80s. That was, I was born in 69. So 70s and 80s music, that's a lot of what I play. And I'm the same way though. I don't like playing it exactly how it sounds or how it was recorded, because if somebody wanted to hear that, they could go listen to the original. I want them to listen to me and to understand where I'm coming from, as you said. And I think that's important in music. And I really hate when you see somebody who does a remake, professionally and records it and puts it out there that it sounds just like the original.
Well, that's part of the reason. And on YouTube, I do have a version of it. There's a song that Chris Stapleton put out a few years ago called Whiskey and You. And it's a beautiful song, tells a great story, but I really do not like the version that either him or Tim McGraw put out. They were new age country is how it was done. What I did was took and recorded that song and slowed it down and took it back into an old style country tempo. And I actually had a gentleman go onto the YouTube, and he goes, I've always liked this song, and he goes, but I've never heard anybody do it in the format that you do. And he goes, so your version is going into my playlist.
Oh, nice.
And I'm going, okay, that was an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'm one of the few people that when you hear the song Tennessee Whiskey and you hear the remake that he did, I don't like it. I think some songs should be left alone. And that's one of them. And I'm like the only person that I know, everybody says how fantastic of a job he did on the remake. And I disagree. I love the original, and I think it should have stayed there. But
and it all depends on what you're used to listening to, and that's just the way it is. And I honor that, and I let people know that if I'm going to do that song, this is my rendition of a Chris Stapleton song. I'm not trying to say that I'm doing it like he did. It's just my rendition of doing it.
Right. And I do that. I mean, there's a lot of music that I play that's like, heavy rock or heavy metal even, that I've made it into an acoustical version, not like unplugged. It's totally different than that. But it's because it's how I enjoy playing it. And, my son's probably my biggest critic because he's a musician as well. And he's into your big, heavy, dark, heavy metal, deathcore. There's only 50 million genres now in music. I grew up, there was like 3. But, I mean, he'll tell me whether it sounds good or it doesn't. And then I move on from there. But I still say that it's just some things shouldn't be remade. It's just like movies too. Some movies should never be remade. Because the Karate Kid's one of them. I hated that they did a remake of that because the first one was it was perfect. I mean, the storyline was perfect. And it's like Hollywood runs out of ideas to do. So they start, pulling from files and say, okay, let's redo this. Let's redo this. I'm just totally against that. But that's my personal opinion.
Now, as you know, going on to a little bit more of what I did, everything was pretty much in that way of doing open mics. Had a great time with doing them. Things kind of changed a little bit because I was still working. I'm a retired highway engineer. Until about 2010, and unfortunately, that's when my first wife got throat cancer and passed away. So things I kind of went into a little bit of into myself, which is common.
Sure.
Luckily, the auto harp group not the auto harp, but the open mic group that I was with, there is a song that was done by a group called the Subdudes. They don't exist anymore, but they wrote a song called Carved in Stone. And when I went to the open mic, probably a week or so after she had passed away, I just needed to get out of the house. I played that song, and I actually had people crying in the audience. And then I actually had 3 to 4 of the other players come up to me and basically took me under their wing and talked to me for about the next 2 hours, which is what I needed. I needed just
Sure.
basically, and so that kind of did a little bit of a change. And then it was probably within the next year, I was just wandering through Facebook, not sure why. I think I was looking on Craigslist, maybe even there is where I was looking, and somebody put on a deal and offered a Desert Rose auto harp, the Diego Desert Rose.
Mm-hmm.
And I luckily was the first one that responded. And the lady that owned it, she had only had it for less than a year. She was legally blind. She could play piano, she could play violin, she could play a lot of different instruments. And she had bought that one because she had wanted to see if she could play it. Being legally blind, she had no way of being able to keep it tuned. She couldn't. And so she just decided that was a mistake. And so basically I bought that one from her, and that changed my way and my thoughts on playing, because the sound that I could get out of that Desert Rose compared to one of the older Oscar Smiths was, like day and night. And that pretty much kind of led me to going to a non-pick style, and which was basically just a rhythm non-pick style of play. Took me a little bit to develop it, but I like what I did and have really enjoyed it. And then let's see, what was it about? I think I had it written down. I'm trying to remember dates as I'm thinking about things. In about 2014 is when I got a hold of a local community fair, and they were looking for people to perform. And I actually volunteered my time. I didn't get paid anything for it. I did a half-hour set. Loved it. And actually I would have been back this year, except for the virus and everything. But I have been asked back every year since then.
That's awesome.
And instead of doing half-hour sets, I do at a minimum a 1 hour set. Sometimes I've done two 1 hour sets, you know, maybe one on a Friday and one on a Sunday, or whatever days they want me. And it was a challenge for me. And that's why I like it as a challenge, because what I had to do was learn how to be up on a stage. And other than what I would have is a reference sheet that would tell me the order of the songs that I was going to play and who the artist that was that wrote them, if it wasn't me, and what the beginning chord progression was. And that's it. And so I would get up there and do an hour's worth of music, and that was all I had. Everything else was by memory. And the songs would range anywhere from stuff out of the 50s. I love some of the old 50s songs, or to some of the newer songs, Willie Nelson. It's just whatever sounded good at the moment. And that's what I would get up there and play. Did some of Dr. Hook. I love playing some of his stuff too. And so that is kind of how I got into doing on stage. That's probably where I feel more comfortable. Have I gotten stage fright at times? Oh, sure. That everybody does.
That's natural.
It all depends. And but for the most part, that is where I feel the most comfortable, is being up on stage and playing in front of an audience. And
I'm there with you on that one. I look forward to being able to do that again. You know, if somebody's never done it, you can't explain to them the rush and the adrenaline of performing for somebody. You can't really explain the feeling to anybody if they haven't experienced it. It's awesome.
And then I think I had to have been about getting into the next part, about 2017, because my first time at the California Auto Harp Gathering was 2018. So it was in about 2017 that I saw an email that Pete Diego put out. And basically what he had was a pile in his shop that was basically his scrap pile. And if you ever looked at his shop, or if you ever get a chance, and I know Hal mentioned a little bit when in his interview, he mentioned a little bit about all the things that are hanging on their walls and all the parts. I picked up probably, close to 15 auto harps from Pete in various stages. None of them came with cord bar assemblies. All of them were in various disrepair. And that is where I started looking at taking them and transitioning them. Instead of having them, because like he was saying, what they would have done is gone to scrap. They would have just gone into a garbage pile, and that would have been it. So what I did was took those same harps and sanded them down to bare wood, and then turned them into art by doing different patterns, coming up with different things. I did a mixture. I've also worked because of just things I've done, I've worked with stained glass before. And so on some of them, I actually went so far as doing mosaic stained glass to do part of the finishes on them. Loved crafting that kind of a thing. And the interesting part of what came out about that is I was talking about it on Facebook about it, and an artist back east by the name of Kathy Beyer contacted me, and she goes, you're turning all these into art. why are you not trying to restore any of them? Well, to me, they were outside of my even thought of having the skills to be able to restore them. So I kind of shoved that off to the side, you know, and I agreed with her, but I'm going, gosh, I don't know if I could even do that. Then it was in the summer of 2018 that I came across or actually I had somebody else contact me and said, hey, do you know that there's an estate sale going on a little bit north of you? They have some auto harps. And I said, oh, okay, I'll go out and look. Well, I got out there. They had probably the gentleman, and Pete did say he recognized the name when I mentioned it to him. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head. But he had probably, I would say 30 to 35 auto harps when he had passed away. And they sold a few of them, and they had a bunch of music books and various things there. I helped out a couple people that were there looking at them. They were trying to decide if there were ones that were still salvageable, and I helped some people pick out some that there were some of the better ones that were there. But then I got talking with the family, and in the end, I ended up picking up about 30 auto harps from them.
Wow.
Not quite. Not only did I get those, I also got a bunch of old cases. And part of the agreement with my picking them up was one of the daughters. I showed her pictures of what I had been working on. Oh, are you?
Just bear with me 1 second here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But no, there was. I had shown the daughter, actually a couple of the daughters, but I had shown them some of the artwork that I had done. And she goes, well, how about if we make this part of the agreement? If we'll let you have all these auto harps, you just do me one that I can hang on my wall. And I asked her, I said, well, is there a particular thing that you like? And it was, I don't know if you're hearing a little warp. It's probably my phone. I've got it on the floor, but every once in a while when it makes noise when the email, when somebody tries to send me an email, which I'm trying to ignore.
I'm actually not even hearing anything.
Okay. But I asked her what she liked, and she said, well, she liked lighthouses. And so I actually took one of the harps that was one of the ones that had belonged to her dad, and it was where the sound hole it was completely caved in, but the rest of the top was in fair condition. And so what I did was worked and actually cut out the hole between where the braces are and actually painted it, sanded it down and painted it so that the lighthouse was inside the area where the sound hole originally was.
Oh.
And then the rest of it was a landscape around the rest of it. And I sent that to her. And from what I understand, it's still hanging on the wall.
And being it was her dad's, I'm sure that meant a lot to her.
So it was, doing that. And the other thing that came out of that was I had one that I had received before. I had a 1955. That was my very first one that I tried to restore. And actually, I did a fairly good job. I learned more later, but I worked with Pete on what it was. Is it had a cracked face and how to repair a cracked face on an auto harp. And it turned out really well. It holds great tune. It's just, my first attempt. But there was ones out of his. Unfortunately, if you've ever seen an auto harp, that has gotten moisture damage. The biggest thing that you will see is on the end where especially on a lot of the old 60s and 70s ones, is where the strings attach. There is a bar that goes across that will start to lift and twist. And when that does, there's really not much you can do to it. It's basically toast. And I would say roughly a third of the harps that I got that were his were in that format, were in that shape. It was sad, but I was able to pull other ones out. I was able to pull a 46 and a 49 number 73 out of there, and I restored them. I'm still watching the 49 came out beautifully. In fact, actually, that one is one of my playable ones that I have. The 46 has a slight bow to the whole thing, about a 1/4 of an inch bow. It holds a tune, but it's one of those ones that's probably not worth anything other than if somebody wanted to learn on. So I haven't I've just been letting it sit with tension and seeing if it'll hold any more, not do anything more to it. But I restored in 1962. That one, I actually, it came out so well. I actually had Tom Fladmark craft a chord bar assembly for it. It came out great. The 49, I actually had a R. Bailey Allen craft a chord bar assembly for that one.
He does good work too.
Yeah, and so it's kind of neat where I can take stuff so far. The 49 was the one that probably took me the most to try and figure out, because that one, actually being old enough, it did have tuning pegs that wouldn't hold. And it's common for being that old. So I went online and worked with Pete on how to repair that by drilling out. And so I actually went out and bought myself a drill press so that I could work on it. So it's been kind of fun learning how to run the drill press too. But it's fun learning that, and that's kind of what has gotten me into the next deals of saying, well, yes, I can take some of these. I have another number 73 that's out in my garage. That's a 1952, I do believe. Unfortunately, it has a cracked face, and so that'll probably be one of the ones that I'll wait and see if I can get the face to stabilize, and then see if I can restore it beyond that. So,
is your would you say that your Desert Rose is still your go-to harp?
For the lot of it, yes. My second go-to harp now is my 62, which I actually call Blue. And the reason is I it's because, and here I'll show you real quick. This is Blue, and there's the that's the Fladmark deal. But okay, you'll notice get things. What I've played with is when I sand them down, I was starting to play with different colors of stain, and that's what this one did. Is I actually have some very neat blue stain. And so that's what that is. And it's kind of an interesting thing. You see the bottom there. That is how I wired in a pickup.
I was just about to
instead of
ask you
drilling
that.
through. Yeah, instead of instead of drilling in through the side, which I didn't really want to do, I managed to come across a Oscar Schmidt pickup and actually wired it in and wired the wire down through the bar, through the back cap. It works great. It was kind of I'm going, okay, let's see if I can figure out how to do it.
So that's the Oscar Schmidt pickup that runs underneath the bridge. I mean, underneath the bars.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
And so it does great. And to kind of do another, what I was saying about the, I know I'm stepping away from the camera. When I was saying about the 49 and about the different colors that I use, this is the 1949 that I restored. And I'm trying to see if I can get the light to do better. But I did a mixture of green and blue stains on it, and then natural wood colors.
It blends really well. It really blends well.
And what I tried to do is follow the existing grain when I was doing the colors. What's interesting, I like about this one, the 62, and I've got another one that I'm working on. I haven't finished it up yet. Is how much resonance, I guess that'd be the right word. Yeah, there goes the train.
Yeah. I was hoping we'd have got through without one, but nope.
Yeah, that's all right. Hey, I'm used to that. But it's how much, when you strum on those, how long it will vibrate, which is to me, that will really show you how good your auto harp is when you strum across just with a single note and see how long those strings will vibrate on their own.
The natural sustain.
And it is, and those two, at least right now so far, and also the 55 that I've restored, all of them will hold that. I mean, it is just, I just got lucky, I think, in a way, trying to figure out how to bring them back, or maybe I picked the right ones to do that with.
Now, the one that's the blue and the greens, whose chord bars are on that?
Well, that was R.B. Allen's that was on that one.
I mean, they look like his. That's why I asked. I like his. I think he does good work for, I don't want to say a novice, but he hasn't been doing it that long.
No. This one is the one I haven't. This is my solid body. I haven't figured out what to do with it yet. But this one is actually one that I'm not done with it yet. But this is one that I actually sanded down the original. They're the original wood bars that would normally come on an old Oscar Schmidt, but I actually sanded them down to bare wood and then brought them back and then crafted the chord bar buttons on it.
All right.
The interesting thing on this one is to get it to where it has the low action. What I found is I'm using, these are the wood chord bars that are off some of the old Oscar Schmidts. But what I'm doing, and I'm still learning how to do it to do a good job, is I'm cutting 1/4 of an inch off of them, in height. And what it does is it drops it down and makes it more like the ones that either Tom Flatmark or Alan is doing,
right,
height-wise. So you don't have that high way up on top deal. I've still got a little playing around with to do on this one. This one has, it looks like leather almost. I'm trying to get it, but it's not. That's actually wood on the bottom. It's just an interesting deal. Instead of putting the standard metal one back on, I decided, I had that wood handy. And so it was actually, I made something simulate.
It looks good. I mean, it does look like leather.
So it's an interesting solid body. I haven't figured out whether I'm going to keep it or eventually get rid of it, but it's, I just, it's one of those deals of seeing if I can find one and can I make it sound good? And let's see, what else would we like to
do you have
rattle on about?
Do you have like a website with pictures of the artwork that you've done for people to see?
Well, I have posted a bunch of them on Facebook before. I tried creating a deal on Face to try and post some of them, but then I got lost trying to figure out how to do it, and so it kind of stopped. Eventually, I'd like to do something more where I could put them up. I had actually, unfortunately, I had asked around here. There is a auto harp gathering that had been happening in Portland or outside of Portland for years. And I asked them if I could bring my art down there and try and show it. And they said, no, their rules wouldn't allow it to be done. I also talked to Kathy Byers, Kathy Bertrell, who is part of the organization that does what they call SAW, which is Seattle Auto Harp Works. And they were not able to allow me to display my auto harp, my artwork. But I did talk with Mike Mueller, and he did agree. And unfortunately, with this virus, I had planned on taking it down there and having them on display and everything else. And that kind of reminds me, the other thing that I did this in January, I completed recording my very own CD. I'm not recording it myself. I actually went into a studio and recorded a CD of 14 of my original songs. They're all songs that either I composed or wrote. And nice. I was going to bring that with me, and that kind of will. So I've got over 100 CDs sitting in a box in my closet that I can't really do much of anything with because there's not really anybody to sell them to.
Well, eventually this is all going to lift and everything will get back to normal. I mean, I was disappointed. I lived 3 hours from Mount Laurel, and I was all set to go. Had reservations, everything done, and that fell through. So, but
yeah, I would love to come down there, and and I should say that yet another point that I have to agree with Hal on. The very first year I went to the California Auto Harp Gathering, I attempted to teach a class. And it was when we started the class that I realized what he said, made sense. Since I don't really have any training in music theory, trying to explain to somebody else, since you what the tempo is of a song that you're doing, even though it's a song that you wrote, yes, you know how to play it, but how if you don't really understand the theory behind the music, how do you tell somebody, oh yeah, that's a a 3/4 time song or whatever else? I realized that, I love to play. I'm just not a instructor. Let's put it that way.
And I understand, and you're absolutely right about that, because you wouldn't be able to tell somebody, okay, this is in 4/4, and we're at about 70 beats a minute. You wouldn't be able to really portray that to somebody because you yourself don't know. I think
so. Yes, I realize my limitations.
Teaching is it's something that when I talked with Carrie last week, it's something that we talked about too, they say those that can do and those that can't teach. And I don't think I subscribe to that, because I think that to be a teacher of especially music, you do have to know what you're doing to be able to do that. And even if you know all the theory and you know everything, I don't think everybody's cut out to be able to teach music in a way that people will understand it.
No, like I said, and I think in knowing, and that's the other thing I could say is, I'm not a person, I can do song circles. I don't mind song circles. Getting into a jam is hard for me. I know that I have lost part of my hearing. And so unless I can sit in a jam and sit directly across from a guitar player who's not going solo, trying to go all over the guitar and basically staying with playing the chords, that's how I can tell. Once I get going on them, then I'm going, oh, okay, then I can follow the progression.
Right.
But if I can't follow I know just by playing guitar as much as I did, I can watch people and I can tell by way they finger, oh yeah, they're doing an F, they're doing a G, they're doing a C, they're doing an E minor, A minor, all of that kind of stuff. I can pick those out on a guitar by watching somebody move their fingers. And so once I do that, then I can say, oh, okay, then I will be able to start following the rhythm of the song. But I do have trouble, and I realize it's a fault of mine. If somebody comes up and says, oh yeah, well, we're going to do this song and it's a 1-4-5 and we're going to, and I'm going, well, you just kind of lost me, because and it's my fault, and it's just laziness on my part. I realize that, but I figure, hey, I'm 70 years old. I can afford to be lazy at times.
That's right. You're right. I mean, it's fortunate that you remembered, the chord structure, to be able to look at it from when you did play guitar. I mean, because think about how lost you'd be if you couldn't even do that.
Yeah, it is, like I said, it's, and I admire people that can teach and can be able to do that. I've met some fantastic teachers down there at CAG. Kathy Bertel is one of them. Oh shoot, my mind's going blank. Karen, I think she kind of got mad at me because she thought I was I was ignoring her when I sat in one of her classes. Karen Mueller, because it wasn't it. I always tried to sit in the back because I know that my style is a little bit different. And when I go into some of those classes, I always try to see if I can come away with something that I can add to the style that I do. And so I trying to not interrupt the rest of the class. I'm trying to absorb, which I'm usually fairly good at, but trying to actually mimic what somebody else is trying to teach me, that's harder for me to do. And that's, some of the things, I actually went to a deal, not when I was first getting started going with some of the classes and stuff. I actually went to one that Brian Bowers put on. And one of the things that I learned from him that I do every time I go to learn a song, is if you find a song, doesn't matter what the song is. Let's say it's Let It Be by the Beatles. Okay. Don't worry about what key they wrote it in. First off, figure out what key you normally would sing it in. You would sing your voice. What does your voice do?
Right.
So in other words, if you normally would do G, then take that song and play it in C and play it in D. Because even though where you normally would play in G may not be the right place for you to play that particular song. You need to look at where, what the music does along with your voice. And so I do that a lot. I mean, there's certain songs that I will play in C. I would say G is probably my normal one, but there's other songs that D is the best one I can play them in, because it's what the song does and how it best brings out the notes in the song are in D. And so I just have to work my voice to match the music instead of doing the other way around.
Right. I was just about to ask you that, if you had a key that you kind of, lean towards when you would write or to work out a song.
But it all depends. Like I said, it all depends on the song. I love the song Bucket of Rain that Bob Dylan wrote. And that one is one that I can pick up a harp at any time, and in the key of D is perfect for that song. And that's what it was. That's what most people playing it in. That was the other song. That was probably one of the first songs, I should say that too, that it wasn't until just before I went to my first group deal down there in California that, because I kept getting prodded to, that I started finger plucking. And even my finger plucking is not what you would call the standard. I call it a freelance. And I'm basically, what I'm after when I'm playing a song is trying to find where the sweet spot of that song for that particular key that I'm in works. And, whether or not, depending on which octave across the harp, and there's, that's what you have to try and find, is where that is. Sure. And then, like I said, there's the other songs. Long-Haired Country Boy is a great song by Charlie Daniels. I do a interesting version of that song. And I kind of, sometimes when I've done performances up on stage, that's been my first song because of my long hair and whatever. And so I said, well, here's my the song that kind of shows who I am. But that song is such a simple song to play, because the only time it changes is in the chorus. The whole song is played in C except for the chorus. That's all you're doing is strumming C the whole song. And and so it's kind of one of those deals that you have to know rhythm to be able to do it.
Sure. And, rhythm on auto harp is not the easiest instrument to find a rhythm on. And I don't know what it is. There's something about it,
And that's where it's just, for me, it's just the opposite. And I have one of my brothers that always gives me a hard time. And he goes, well, you need to be stomping your foot. And I said, I can't do that. And he goes, yeah, but how is anybody else? And I said, I cannot do it. I have to do it in my head. If I try to keep rhythm any place but in my head, I can't do it.
Right.
And so that's what works for me.
Well, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? The style that works for you, the keys that work for you. Joanne Smith told me several months ago that the auto harp you shouldn't really conform to the auto harp. You make it conform to you.
Yes, and I can see that very much. It is an interesting instrument, and there are various ways of doing things. One of the things that popped into my head the other night, and I may have to look, and that is, I guess I could go into the harps that I was just talking about, my 55, the 49, the 62. All of those harps are done in a modified. I decided I really don't care for diatonic. Because mainly a lot of people play diatonics or playing medley, and so what I do is each one of those harps is in a modified version of chromatic. And what I say by modified is I kind of lean towards them, and Hal kind of would talk about the same thing. They're a hybrid. And the reason we call it that, or the reason I call it that, is I use an Excel sheet, and I will put all of the normal tuning down. And then as I go across every one of the chord bars that I'm going to use, and then I start laying them all out because I have information that tells me, okay, this is what. When I'm all done, I'll look for any string that is not used at all in any of those chord bar arrangements. So it may be that because of the ones that I'm using, maybe D is not used at all, or D sharp, I'm sorry. And so if that's the case, then I will tune all of the D sharps to D, so that you'll actually have two strings side by side that are D. I have ones that I've done that with D and A and G. Depends on where you use that. The solid body one, I think I'm going to have to retune a little bit on that one. That's the first one I've attempted to use 3 times where I've done. I think it has both. It has E, D, and G, all has double up strings. And to me, I think it's a little too much. And so I may back one of those off. I'm just not sure what. And it's a learning experience and trying to figure out how to make things work.
Well, I mean, I know that I enjoy hearing when people make the harp their own. Like Hal made the baritone, Todd made the prism. You're making your hybrid with the doing. I mean, I like hearing when people actually modify the harp to what they want it to be. I mean, I really enjoy hearing about that.
Yeah, you bring out the sound. You can bring out different sounds. The one thing that I was just going to start talking about is what popped into my head is I may look at trying, since I don't use sevenths very often, I may end up here in the near future try to build myself a chord bar assembly and only have 8 bars on it. And basically I may only have, I'm not sure if I'll do 5 or 10 or 8, but I may only have majors and minors, nothing else. No sevenths on it, because I don't usually play them anyway, and then see where I could go from there. But before I do that, I'll probably put it on an Excel sheet and see, exactly how radical that would be. And that's what I like about doing with the Excel sheets. The Excel sheet allows you to see what does your harp do. That I can't remember who was that gave me the advice, but that solid body doesn't have a standard F, or it doesn't have an F on it, because I've doubled up the E's and it actually starts in E. It doesn't start in F. And so from there, all the F's went away. And so I'm doubled up any place where there's an E. And so it's got a unique sound of itself. It's a little, and somebody else recommended that to me. They said, "Oh, here, why don't you try this?" And I'm going, "Okay, I'll see what I can do with it."
Give it a shot. Why not? That's cool, though. I mean, I'm the same way with sevenths. I think I have 3. I have F7, G7, and a B7. And the reason why I have the B7 is because I don't have a standard B chord. So if I play something that calls for it, then I just play the 7th, regardless of where it falls in the pattern. And if you need the B, you just don't strum all the way through. You stop before you get to the 7th, and it sounds fine. So, well, Dan, I've enjoyed our talk today. You've been most influential in a lot of ways.
let me pass one more quick thing on, and it's something that, I got sitting here for a second and thinking about it. For anybody else out there who watches this and is just getting started, understand that you'll hear this from more than one person. Find a song, doesn't matter what it is, and learn how to play that song without looking at the chord bar buttons. That will help you out tremendously. The song that I actually did that with and I used eventually it was one that I went with that probably helped me a lot, was a 6-chord song, a 6-chord version of What Child Is This? And a Christmas song, but it taught me a lot because on that particular one, you had to do a lot of stretching to go between different chords. And it helped me to learn how not to look down at my hand. If I'm changing from one harp to another, yes, I still have a tendency to do that because sometimes the spacing is different. And I will do that. But when you're first learning, you're probably only playing on 1 or maybe 2 harps at the most. Learn how to look at those things. Learn how to play the song without ever having to look down at your fingers. That is a major thing to learn.
And that's great advice because, you should definitely be able to feel your way around the harp. You're right. That's great advice, especially for a beginner. And once you can do that with one song, then, hey, there's another song you can do it with, and you just build on from there.
There's a way, if you want, the lady I was mentioning that I bought the Desert Rose from, who was blind, I think Pete had done it for her. So I think there's ways of having it done. But she actually had a button installed at the center of the C. So she could find that chord.
Oh, almost like on a keyboard with a home key.
Yeah, but there's just a little raised button on the C. And so if somebody's having trouble trying to figure out and trying to go back, yes, you could get a small button and put it there to help yourself learn to orient.
That's not a bad idea either, because that would definitely help with knowing where you are. Especially when you're playing songs, like you said, with 6 chords, you're working your way around that, around the chord bar setup. So, knowing where home is, that would definitely be a bonus. That's good advice.
Okay.
That's
well, Jeff, yes, it has been very good chatting with you. And
absolutely, man. I appreciate you stopping by and enlightening us with a lot of things in your world.
Thank you very much. And
you're welcome.
All right. We'll talk to you another time. I'll be waiting to see what it looks like when I actually review it myself.
Exactly. I'll send you the link to it prior to so you can view it before anybody else does.
All right.
But Dan, you take care. And again, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Yep. I'm going to go cool off somewhere. I don't know how warm it is out there, but it's warm here.
It's been getting cool. Yesterday morning, it went down to like 51 at night. It was kind of a cool night.
No, it's been hanging around 80 for about the last week, and even hotter. And they're still predicting at least 80 for the next week.
Oh, wow. I could smell fall yesterday. It's still away a little bit, but I can smell it. Yeah. All right, Dan,
right.
You take care of yourself. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. That was the interview with Mr. Dan Presler, and hope you enjoy it. And I'll be posting this up on YouTube and to Facebook, and I'll also be putting it on my podcast page. So for now, this is Penguin saying practice and enjoy. Bye-bye.